Hello, sawubona mbukeli, sesifikile thina nohlelo Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right, and thank you so much for joining us. Mina ke nginguMajalu alishe igama njengenjwayelo nani sizonvulela izingcingo la ngokuhamba kwesikhathi ukuthi phela nani nikwazi ukubamba iqhaza endabeni yethu yanamhlanje. Our participation line 011 714 6918 or 714 6919. You can also email us your views to consumer@sabc.co.za. Usithole futhi ku Facebook na ku Twitter. Sawubona mbukeli. Taking out a new loan to settle old debts remains one of the options consumers have at their disposal. Debt consolidation is fast gaining appeal as a lifesaver among consumers who want to make their debts history. But experts warn that consolidating your debts into one loan does not necessarily work for every consumer. Akesibonela ukuthi bathini.
Kumaxesha apho izinga lamatyala enziwa ngabathengi lifikelela kwi-trillions zeerandi, abaninzi kubo bangenza nantoni na ukuphuma kuloo matyala. Enye yezinto ukuthatha elinye ityala ngenjongo zokuvala onke amatyala akho. I-debt consolidation kulasemzini.
Debt consolidation is a process where you actually take your existing debt, you put it into one, and you pay one installment.
Le ndlela yokucima amatyala inganomtsalane kubantu abahlutshwa ngamagqwetha kunye naziivenkile eziqoqa amatyala. Ingakumbi kwabo barhola umvuzo ophantsi nosoloko ufuna kuncediswa ngenye imali ecaleni.
Kubi kakhulu whereby abomashonisa are our kind of lifesaver because abafuni credit ratings. Ibank asikwazi ukusiza kaloko ngoba sesibolile pha ku credit bureau.
Ngafumana i-loan ye-10,000 nyani ndayifumana le loan ye-10,000 ngoko kuyibuyisele emuva ndiyahluleka mara ndiyazama kodwa ndiyahluleka.
Societal pressure puts one into more debts. While trying to recover one debt, you take another one, and it puts so much pressure on individuals who are in the working class.
Ingcali kulawulo lwamatyala uPaul Slot uthi malunga neepesenti ezingama-49 zomvuzo ziya ematyaleni. Uthi nangona abasemagunyeni bebila besoma bezama ukuhlangula abantu ematyaleni, uninzi aluveli nangonwele ngenxa yokuntyumpa-ntyumpeka kuwo.
The phenomenon of consumers asking for another loan to repay existing loans is a wrong attitude. Because what you should be doing, if you're considering to take out a loan to repay existing loan, there's something wrong in your cash flow.
Abanye abathengi bayavumelana nale mbono.
Lo uyohlala entyumpa-ntyumpeke ematyaleni ngoba umatshonisa iyazala kwale uyobhatala ngayo. Xa kumele ubhatale le futhi uzafumanisa uba awunayo kufuneka uphinde uyoboleka futhi oko nje.
Ukuba unamatyala amaninzi athe saa oko ugqiba imali iphele vuthu kuba inzala ekumele ihlawule kuloo matyala iyoyikisa. Ingaphakathi kweepesenti ezingu-17 ubuncinci uyokutsho ku-40 weepesenti. Ukani kwelinye icala umntu angonga imali ukuba ubhatala ityala elinye ngenzala ephantsi kakhulu. Ingcali kodwa zithi ukuze le ndlela isebenze kufuneka umntu atshintshe isimo aphatha ngaso imali.
It only works if the total cost of your previous debt is more than what you're going to pay on a consolidation loan.
Ukuboleka imali ngenjongo yokucima amatyala ifanele abantu abanamatyala amakhulu kakhulu, hayi imfitshi-mfitshi. Ingcali ezilumkisa ngelithi ayibobulungu ukwenza amatyala kuba ikati ilele eziko, umvuzo awaneli. Kuqala umntu kufuneka aqinisekise ukuba uyakwazi ukumelana neentlawulo zamatyala akhe, kuba ukuba uyoyisakala ungazibona usengxakini kakhulu. Kuvuyisile Mdoda, Yilungelo Lakho.
Alright, sibonge kakhulu ngalo mbiko esiwenzele nguvuyisile Mdoda. Manje ke ukukhuluma kabanzi debt consolidation and to further discuss ukuthi wena ungazihlanganisa kanjani izikweletu zakho ukuze phela ukwazi ukuzikhokha. Asamukele izivakashi zethu la e-studio sinayo ubhuti Andile Fulane. Yena osiza abathengi phela ngokuphathwa kwezimali. Sibe no Annalene van der Poel, yena uphuma kwa Debt Rescue, kanti no Mr. Scott McDamond, yena uphuma kwa Home Loans. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to three of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, let's start with you. Andi, losichazele kabanzi sizwa kuthiwa wena usiza abantu mayelana nezokuphatha imali. Awuchazela abalaleli ekhaya.
Okay, Tina, Seed of Prosperity, basically we do financial education, a whole lot of financial literacy. Because the reason why abantu bayenza amaphutha amaningi so it's because they don't know better. And if they know better, they can do better. So that's where we actually take it from. Abantu abaningi, I mean, deprive information in education for isikhathi eside. That's why bangabheka ama-statistics. Abantu abaseyigweletini kakhulu. Not ukuthi ama-upper level earners wona angcono. Kodwa abantu abaseyigweletini kakhulu ilaba bebengana information and who did not have access to credit. You must remember as well. Abantu at first did not have access to credit. So they get overwhelmed with this new information and with this new
money
access,
as well.
you know, to credit. So you are down in the ground. Yeah, but we do it at all levels. But mostly we've seen the problem is actually down there, yeah.
All right, Annalene, how do you help our viewers out there?
Well, what we do is debt counselling. So at Debt Rescue, we act in terms of the National Credit Act and we provide assistance to over-indebted consumers. So we start by obviously assisting consumers by having a look at their budget, seeing what they can afford to pay towards their debt, what they are currently paying, and then making a reasonable offer towards their debt as a totality.
Oh, okay.
And it's a very successful process. I mean, it's a very good money repayment tool on a monthly basis in the industry as a whole. And I think it's become a very dependable method, knowing that no new legal action can happen against a consumer whilst they are under debt review, as long as they honour their payments, the arrangements that have been made.
Right.
So wonderful tool out there and very important for consumers who are over indebted.
You know what, we're going to talk about if you're the go-to person for that consolidation loan. Scott, please explain to our viewers what it is that you do.
Let me tell you, keep me till the end because I lend the money. Because we lend the money, so yeah, you can.
You put people in trouble.
There we go. Hope not. I think what's important, just talking about education, taking back a step from consolidation of debt.
Yes.
It actually comes down to the public managing their credit profiles. I think that is where you should really be starting, is that people don't realize the importance of a clean credit history in terms of your payment profile, are your payments up to date, you've got no arrears, no judgments, because it's no good coming to consolidate your debt if you've got a history of bad management.
Yeah.
It's not an out of jail card to think, right, I've run myself into debt, let me go to a financial institution, I'll consolidate my debt and I can start all over again. It doesn't work like that. So I think that's important. I think we go back to education, is that we educate everybody in terms of maintaining a clean, healthy, good payment profile. So I think that's a topic on its own. I think we could discuss
Definitely.
Another program. I could go on for hours. But coming back to consolidation of debt, obviously we're in the home loan business, and we're not just lending 10 Rand or 100 Rand, it's a substantial amount of money.
True.
Now what we're finding is clients are coming to us saying we'd like to consolidate our debt. Now what people do is they take existing debt, which is normally short-term debt, could be a credit card, a personal loan, overdraft, etc., vehicle finance, clothing accounts,
furniture,
and that kind of stuff. And what they do is they want to take that debt and put it into one account, basically. Now what's happening is you're paying different interest rates for those from 10% to 20, 25%. By putting it into your home loan, for example, you can bring that down to a 10%
But
home
how
loan
does
repayment.
that work, Scott, though?
Well,
that's very interesting. And is it a good idea?
Yes and no. I'll
Give
do
us
the good,
the
I'll
both,
give the
the
good and the
no and
bad.
the
I have to
yes.
give you the good and the bad. What basically happens, if you've got a property, you've got equity in your property, for example. So your loan is R1 million and the loan registered amount is 2 million Rand, for example. So you've got equity in the property that you can still use. So if you've got other loans, you could then bring those other loans to a financial institution. We cap it, add it onto your home loan amount, which would then form part of the bigger picture, and you pay the home loan interest rate for all that debt.
Okay.
Now I'll give you an example. Say you have a bond of 600,000, all right? You have a vehicle finance of 120,000, personal loan 45,000, and a credit card of say 25,000. That's about 190,000 on top of your home loan. Now you can put that on top and have a home loan of 790,000. Okay. Now your repayment on that would save you about say 3,500 Rand a month. That's why people do it. They do it to reduce their monthly commitments.
Okay.
So they're paying X amount on all those loans. By consolidating it, they're paying one amount, okay? Now your repayments previously could have been 10,700 Rand. By putting on your home loan, your repayments will be 7,100 Rand. But, there's a big but.
Tell us
If you're
the
not
point, Scott.
disciplined, a home loan is over 20 or 30 years.
Yes.
So you've now taken your vehicle finance, you've now taken your personal loan, which would have been a 3, 4, 5-year repayment over 20 years. That is the danger. What you should be doing is taking that 3,500 rand you're saving every month and putting that back into your bond.
Absolutely.
And that you can reduce it down to a 10-year period. So it comes down to discipline.
All right, you know, Scott, this sounds all very complicated. But Annelien, can you explain to us, before you come to that agreement of saying, all right, I'm going to consolidate everything into that home loan, what are the proper processes that you need to follow to even consider debt consolidation? Let's start there.
I think it's very important that people understand what debt consolidation
Absolutely.
truly is, because it's a very loose term right now that everybody just says, okay, well, I'll consolidate my debt. As Scott has rightfully said, firstly, you have to keep your credit profile clear. Just because you say, I want to go and consolidate, doesn't necessarily mean, firstly, that you're actually even going to qualify. Because if you have a bad payment history, absolutely, it's a loan at the end of the day. And a true consolidation loan can either be done against an asset, such as your home loan at the end of the day, where they lend you that money against your asset, and you pay back on that if you qualify. The alternative is if you take an unsecured loan and you use that to repay the debt again. But the purpose of the consolidation loan is to take that money and settle your other debts. Get your settlement amounts, pay them off, and ideally close them so that you do not have access to that again. And in practice, that's not what we're seeing. Because what we are seeing is people will go and approach for a consolidation loan. Once they have that money, and it's not necessarily that they're going to then use it on luxuries, but it will be a question of, I haven't serviced my vehicle in a year, I need to now go service my vehicle. It could be all these little expenses that they haven't incurred so far that they need to go and do. And by the time they've finished that, there's so little of that those funds left that once they start applying it to the debt, they're not covering it properly in any case.
Please, let's hold it there for now, because I really want to get more of this information shortly after this break. Please stay with us. We're now taking your calls on 011-714-6918, alternatively 714-6919. Ungasithumela email ayikakashintshi sathi consumer@sabc.co.za or usilandele lapha ku Facebook noma ku Twitter. Andile wena uthini ngale ndaba yokuthi how important it is ukuthi umuntu abe ne record clean, and do you recommend ukuthi abantu bathathe le consolidation loan?
Well, njengoba bese bashilo ukuthi consolidation loan akuse yonke umuntu. Okay, so if une record clean, then you stand a good chance of having interest rate engcono. Ngoba it defeats the purpose ukuthi uyothatha consolidation loan kodwa interest rate iloku iphezulu. So installment isizoyehla, yes probably, but iminyaka iya phambili iba miningi. Interest rate mayiphezulu, it means in overall ibalance ozoyibhadala izabe iningi than lento lama loan amancane bewe maningi bewunawo. So kusemqoko ukuthi i-credit record yakho ibe clean, and abantu abazi ukuthi bangaba ne credit what do you call it, credit score sabo from the credit bureaus free of charge each and every year. So free of charge bayaya bathola credit report yabo ibabonisa ukuthi uyin arrears lapha kumele ulungise la kumele ulungiselana yabona. So kumele yenziwe yona lento leyo, but kumele yenziwe with information. Akumelanga kuseyinto kumele uyijumpele nje just because ucabanga it's a magic pill izolungiswa zonke izinto yabona.
All right, so Annelien, it's not really a magic pill. You really have to consider everything before you take that consolidation loan.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, if you end up being the good consumer where you are paying off the debt that you have with this consolidation loan, in essence, you're replacing debt with debt. So you have to be very committed to the repayments of that consolidation loan to actually get rid of your debt at the end of the day. On the alternative side, if you did not actually go and settle your debt,
went to car service and everything else, what happens?
You've now added to your debt burden. So you've actually defeated the object completely, and you've placed yourself into an even worse off position.
But is there no way of checking that the bank that gives you that loan, that they actually allocate that money towards you paying for all those things that you're saying you're consolidating? I mean, it doesn't make make sense.
There's
that
no
they would just give you a lump sum of
The
money.
thing is, there's no legislation that covers that.
It's so difficult because clients have said, I will pay off that credit, I'll cut up that credit
They
card.
come crying there to
I
you,
will not go back
Scott.
to retail store, and what happens?
They go shopping.
They go shopping.
All right, let's take
Unfortunately,
off.
We cannot,
You can't regulate what happens to the money. Oh, very unfortunate indeed. All right, let's take our very first caller. Andile ePenon put Andile. Sakwamukela ohlelweni nango omunye uAndile la ngicela usibuze umbuzo noma ubeke umbono. Andile, usasekhona elayinini? All right, I think we've lost Andile there for a moment. Please carry on there, Scott.
What we pick up is that it's not a matter of we just dish out consolidation of debt. It's something we look at very carefully. We look at the profile of the client. If we see a client's got 4 or 5 or 6 credit cards max to the top, they've missed payments, you're not doing anybody any favors by trying to consolidate that debt. It doesn't happen. We don't do it. Again, it's down to the discipline. It's down to the discipline where you see those people, they take that extra cash they've got, residual cash, and they put it back into their bond or other, whatever vehicle they're using. Then it makes sense. But unfortunately, I think as South Africans, we're not as disciplined as we should be, and that's
we
a
all
problem
know that we're very bad when it comes to our savings culture. Let's welcome Andile back on the line. But Andile, siyakwamukela futhi ohlelweni osibuza umbuzo nsizwa.
Yebo kunjani?
Siyaphila bhuti wami. Qhubeka nombuzo.
Bengisacela ukubuza la kulabantu abasibolekisa ngemali, and then ake sithi futhi nenkinga la emsebenzini ngisebenza short time, and then emsebenzini benginike iletter ukuthi ngiyise la ngiboleke khona imali ezinje kwelinye lamabhank, and then why bengavumi ukuthi basidonsele imali kancane okusuke ungasakhona uafford le mali lena.
Angikuzwa bhuti Andile, ngicela ungiqalele phansi ungibuza umbuzo futhi.
Ngithi let's say ngiboleka imali ebhank, angithi bese ngisebenza short time emsebenzini bengenzela iletter bethi angiyise ebhank. Why ebhank bengafuni ukuthi bangidonsele imali kancane ukuze khona uafford le mali le?
Oh, okay. No, I don't think. Basically, he says he borrowed money from the bank. He got a letter from work to go and borrow money from the bank, but now the bank doesn't want him to repay it back in installments. Andile uzwile ukuthi ubethini?
Angizwisisi kahle into ayikhulumayo kodwa ngicabanga mhlawumbe like some employers have ama financial wellness program, employee financial wellness program, where there's an on-site expert or employee angakhuluma nayo, and that employee mhlawumbe bam-advisile ukuthi aye ebhenki take and uyokhuluma nebhenki yakho. For instance, we do that ukuthi go and do a voluntary arrangement, so sizoprepare ibudget for umuntu sithi okay ibudget yakho nazi ikweleti zakho zonke zihlangene, so sicela bank nayi iletha lo muntu usenkingeni mhlawumbe akaqualify. For instance, ile debt counselling okukhulunywa ngayo net consolidation, you know, it's not something that you just qualify for. So mhlawumbe akaqualify for debt counselling, akaqualify for consolidation, then siyamcela ukuthi because amanye amabhenki amakhulu you can be able to make arrangements to pay lower installments. So that's probably what happened, but they declined still maybe the arrangement that they actually wanted to do, and they're at liberty because at the end of the day imali yabo, and they check the risk as well. You know what I mean? But ekugcineni akusizi i-consumer, because the consumer still is not going to be able to pay. Yeah, so I mean I think there must be a bit of flexibility in terms of creditors abantu mabaza when they come forth, you know, voluntarily and say I'm not coping, because they're going to end up defaulting on those debts and end up not paying at all.
Look, at which point should then one really say, you know what, I'm really considering a debt consolidation? Well, let's start with you, Scott.
We've chatted before the program exactly on this point. What happens is if a client phones and saying, I'm going into trouble, I can see it happening, we love it.
This is before they go into trouble.
They're actually thinking, I think I'm going to miss my payment this month or whatever. Rather contact us or contact your financial institution, because we can always hopefully make an arrangement if there's equity in the property. Rather, we're not in the business of selling houses. We don't want to take somebody's house away from them. We'd rather make that arrangement if we can. So we always say to clients, let us know straight away if there's going to be an issue, and let's see what we can do. It's always better.
Annelien, how do you guys deal with people that come to you? What are some of the things that you look at before you consider that person for a loan?
Well, look, we don't give loans. Obviously,
or recommendation for debt consolidation.
We would look at their payment history. I mean, if this is not a disciplined person who has already, for example, nothing has changed in his life dramatically, so he hasn't lost his job and that's the reason he's missed some payments or whatever, our recommendation would definitely not be a consolidation loan, because we maintain you're replacing debt with debt. You should rather be making an effort to settle the debt that you already have. And that's when we will start from a debt counselling perspective saying, well, you can afford to go under debt review. There are sufficient funds to make a reasonable offer to settle your debt, repay it under the debt review program, as opposed to applying for a consolidation loan, which is not necessarily going to be the best option. So we look at various factors at that point.
All right. Let's take uDanka from KwaNongoma. Sekwamukela bhuti ohlelweni umbuzo noma umbono. Danka, uyasizwa bhuti? All right, we seem to be having a problem with our callers today, but you know what I wanted to find out before we go any further? How is this process then different from debt counseling or debt review? Andile, ungasichazela wena?
Yes, debt counseling is basically a restructuring of your debt. Basically, ubheka ukuthi imali onayo ingakanani.
Who restructures this debt of
mine? The
mine?
debt counselor. So a debt counselor is someone who's registered with the NCR, the National Credit Regulator. Kumele abe ne-license, and then bazobheka ukuthi wena over indebted kangakanani. So equality is tata how much. For instance, kunento ebizwa debt to income ratio. So uqala ngayo. Kuyabheka ukuthi equality is tata how much of your salary, and wena udinga malini for your budget expenses. That means for your month to month expenses or day-to-day expenses. And it says maybe we earn 10,000 and the debts are taking like 9,000 of it. So okay, after my expenses work, my school fees, ukudla, and all those things, usala ngamalini that you can offer maybe from that 10,000.
Okay.
My city lays or my expenses work or ends are 4,000 or 4,500. So the 6,000 esalayo, then you'll go and negotiate. The debt counselor goes and negotiate na ma creditors. Okay, nanglo muntu akakhona ukubhadala 9,000, but they can afford to pay only 6,000 from their 10,000, and then they can negotiate with that amount.
Awubambe lapho Andile nanguDanka from KwaNongoma usebuyile line. But Danka usuyasizwa manje?
Yebo ngiyanezwa sir.
Siyakuzwa nsizwa, qhubeka nombuzo ke.
Ngikhuluma noDanka eMabanga KwaNongoma. Mina ngicela ukubuza lokho abathi i-debt consolidation.
Yebo bhuti.
Ukuthi khona if u-apply khona ikhona ne-admission fee oyibhadalayo or else bona bakucheckele iy'kweletu zakho bakubhadarele and then wena sewuzobhadala monthly or else mali uyibhadala phambili before bakwenzele leyo nto leyo.
Oh, okay ke bhuti, uhlale nje kanjalo kumabona kude wakho ngoba sothatha ikhefu kodwa mesibuya sohlala phezulu kombuzo wakho bhuti. Mbukeli, let's pause it there and take another quick commercial break. We'll be back shortly after this. Welcome back Yilungelo Lakho mbukeli, khumbula ukuthi nawe uma usafisa ukusishayela khona uzobamba iqhaza. Please urgently call us. Our studio lines will be on your screen, numbers zakhona, noma usithumele ama thoughts wakho ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Siyatholakala futhi ku Facebook na ku Twitter. All right, so let's answer a question here bhuti before see a break in. He was asking ukuthi how do you then determine if a person is going to qualify for a debt consolidation loan? Do you look at their debts? I think we had basically gone over it, but can we just give it to him again, Scott?
It's like any credit you apply for.
Okay.
You've got to prove affordability. All right. So what we would do is we look at your income, we look at your debt, and we look at there's affordability and your expenses. Can you afford to repay that debt? And based on that, we'll say yay or nay. It's not a matter of because I'm applying, I'm going to get it. And there's many times, again, we chatted before, where we actually say no to clients.
So you decide you decide everything on the repayments, and everything.
So a client comes to, I'd like to consolidate my debt. I have these credit cards, I've got these loans. We look at the amount that's going to go on top of their existing home loan, for example. We do the calculator, we say, sorry, yay or nay, no, you cannot afford it, and we decline it. So you will not get that consolidation.
Okay.
Some people get very upset with us, but we're actually doing them a favor. We're saying you cannot afford this because going down the line, I think you must have experienced it, the clients get into trouble. So it's a matter of doing the normal credit risk assessment at that time of applying.
All right, I hope uzwileke lapho, but usafuna uku something
Andile. Part of the question was saying, do we get charged? Does the person get charged for taking a consolidation loan? And it's like any other loan. There's fees that actually, that's initial fees, but they form part of the installment.
Okay.
Yes, initially. I think that's what the initial question was. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Ke masithathe uMakyolo usebuyile online. Makyolo siyakwamukela ohleleni umbuzo noma umbono.
Molo sisi wami.
Molo bhuti wami, qhubeka nombuzo.
Ngizwa kaMatyolo mina ndapha eMthathe Eastern Cape.
Yebo bhuti siyakwamukela.
Sisi wami ndifuna ukuqonda apha ngoba hlekazi apho uhleli nabo.
Yebo bhuti.
Kukho aba bantu basezilalini bamkela indodla bazithathe into zabo bazise komatshonisa. Bangacetyiswa banjani umuntu ashiye ikhadi lakhe lakwasasa aphinda ashiye ikhadi linazika ibhasi lakhe angazifumani ngoba ezamali ziyazala pha and abakude nokucetyiswa ababantu pha ezilalini kwindawo ezinjengeka zifudula iformer Transkei bangacetyiswa kanjani wena sisi wami ngifuna nje uqonda kulona ngoba bakude nolwazi ngomakhulu bethu notamkhulu bethu ungenziwa njani wena sisi wami enkosi.
Siyabonga kakhulu bhuti Makyolo. Andile.
Yeah, no, ingxaki ye-unregistered lenders.
That's the thing.
Unregistered loan sharks, basically. Bathatha ama IDs wabantu, amakhadi wabantu, you know, they cannot, I mean, and into esemqoka, and I think into esimportant, but abantu they must go to a registered lender. You know, if iyafuneka uba uthethe credit, because most of the time abantu ama reasons abaza ngawo ukuthi bathi bafuna uthatha credit, you know, siyayicheka naloo nto ba is it a valid reason to actually take credit? Ufumana uba there's a family member wants who's borrowing money from you, and now you are borrowing money because you are more credit worthy, because they cannot get credit anywhere else. So siba advise ba mabaye in registered lenders, and registered lenders, you know, you can call it NCR if it's difficult uba ufumana uba umbano registered or not, but unregistered lenders are very shady. Uzayibona lonto ba kuthathwe i-ID yomntu, it's illegal.
Uthatha ngaloo nto kaloku bhuti Andile Makyolo uthi they don't have the relevant information, so where can they go, because their first option is to go to the informal lenders. I mean, they don't have other options, so where else can they get information to try and go the right route?
Yeah, yiloo nto ba funeke sifumane mhlawumbe you can be able to publicize the numbers e-NCR. Bafonele i-NCR. I think that's the safest place to actually go if ufuna ufumana ba, because all the registered lenders and the debt counselors, everyone else who's playing in the credit industry must be registered with the NCR. So it's better, but I know that the NCR and other consumer institutions are doing road shows as well. If you go to road shows around consumer education and so forth, abantu funeke pay attention and attend those road shows so that they can know better about how to handle their finances.
Speaking of the NCA, Scott, how does this then tie in with the debt consolidation?
Well, it's very good because I say we have to prove affordability, that the client can afford that loan, that repayment.
According to the NCA standards.
It is. Okay. Because it came in about 2008. It's one of the best things that could have happened was the new Credit Act coming in place. It's restricted the banks to its lending. They're going to be more responsible, let's put it that way. And we cannot, and as I say, many times clients will give you numbers and figures for expenses and just to try and get that loan, and we'll decline it because we're not happy with it. But you see,
that's the problem, Scott. I think, I know he was off the topic a little bit, our previous caller, but when they get declined from the reputable institutions, they go seek the informal trade. So how do we then balance the two?
It's education. It actually comes down to education. It really, really is. And I think as registered lenders, we also need to be educating clients today not to do this, not to go to these unauthorized lenders.
What do you think, Annalene? What advice do you give to your people, especially if you can't give them that option to go for debt consolidation?
I think the most important thing is that everything, and this is part of the financial education, is it starts with a budget. You need, the sooner we can teach anybody to budget, and we were having a discussion ahead of time, we were talking the youth, we need them to understand what it is to budget, how to deal with finances. In other words, looking, and this could start as young as children. If you get pocket money, how much pocket money do you have? If you want to buy something, how much is it going to cost you? Start budgeting in essence for it from a young age, because if we start learning this discipline of dealing with a budget and how to spend your money and not to go and buy something, just, you know, the difference between wants and needs, I want, I need, understanding that difference, going and doing bargain shopping, comparison shopping, we will already change the culture of how we approach spending in this country as a whole. And once we get that understanding, we will live within our means, because that's something that's very difficult. The moment my salary goes up, I live according to that new ceiling of mine. Don't automatically increase your living expenses just because your salary might have increased, because we do not know what the day of tomorrow holds. We know what the current economic climate is. 2016 has started off very, very difficult. That consumers understand what their rights are. And then, like I say, worst case, if you already see that you cannot make ends meet, you cannot pay your debt as well as service your minimum monthly living expenses, as Andile has previously said, making sure that you can put food on the table, transport to work, etc., knowing that you have recourse provided by the same National Credit Act in the form of debt counselling, seeking help and making a new payment arrangement with those credit providers that at least protects you from the legal action, and in the process you're paying off the debt that you have without replacing it with further debt, which is so important.
I think what's important, if I just jump in there, with, debt counselling and it's such a negative stigma. It's actually not. It doesn't have to be. You know, debt consolidation, we've had clients come to us and say,
is this a foreign
they
policy?
do it, but what they do is they look and say interest rates could be rising, which they're starting to happen. I can see some expenses coming. Let me be proactive and try and consolidate some of my debt. So people do that as well. It's not just a matter of now I'm in trouble, I have to do debt consolidation. Just, you mustn't just see it as a negative. You can use it as a tool to help you go through as well.
All right, I think we'll talk about other options. Hold it right there, Andile, because we have Philiswa from Ekhayelitsha on the line. Sis Philiswa, umbuzo noma umbono siyakwamukela ohlelweni. Sis Philiswa, uyasiva?
Hello.
Hello, sis, siqhubeka ngombuzo noma umbono?
I was being co-employed last year,
yes,
and I had my debts as well. So what happened? I had a car that I was not able to pay. All my accounts, I could not pay them. So I was not employed for the whole year up until October, November last year. So at the same time, my car was being issued with this court orders. I think the sheriff came for the car. And they were telling me now they are issuing this, and in a 2 weeks' time they will be coming to fetch the car if I don't make any other arrangements.
Sis Philiswa, did you call?
Before I was working.
Sis Philiswa, did you call creditors wakho baxelela uba you were no longer employed and try to make some sort of arrangement for payments before they gave you the summons?
They were phoning me, and I would tell them I'm not employed, including the car as well. Now they phoned me, and I told them, they were even coming up and I told them I'm not working.
Okay, so qhubeka ke sisi ngombuzo.
So around about this year now, they were coming and saying they sent the sheriff to come and fetch the car.
Okay.
And I didn't give it to them. I was telling them, I'm working now. I can make an arrangement to pay the car, and they were saying they can't make any arrangement. The only option for me is to pay the full amount of the car, which is 190,000.
Okay. All right.
And I was telling them, where am I going to get 190,000 because I was not working.
Okay, so kugqibeleke kwenzakele ntoni sis bayithathile
I went for it at review, and they said they couldn't put in the car because they tried to negotiate with the bank, and they totally refused. They said they want 190,000.
Okay.
So the other debt was consolidated, and the car, they said I must just give it in. Now my concern is the car, if I give it in, the car is going to be sold for a lesser amount, and I'm still liable for the rest of the payment.
Okay.
So how is that helping me?
Okay. All right, sis Philiswa, sicela nje uhlale uthe njo pha kumabonakude wakho mbukeli okwamanje masiphinde sithi shelele itolo. We'll come back and deal with that question. Welcome back, Mbogeli. Remember to take part in our discussion. Njengabo bonke laba basifonelile sithinte la ku 011-714-6918. Alternatively, 714-6919. Ungasithumela email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Siyatholakala futhi kuma social media platforms. All right, who wants to tackle that issue first? Let's start with you, Andile.
Yes, we heard the question quite clearly. It's quite a difficult position to be in. And by right, the debt counsellor cannot include something that, the action has already started on that particular car, which says the consumer actually needs to be proactive. When they see that this is going to happen, they need to either go to a debt counsellor and so forth. Yes, or speak to the creditor. The fact that they are coming for you and you haven't said anything, like on its own, it's a problem. But there is, a bit of a solution. There's people who are still doing mediation, what they call a debt relief plan, where an expert. It's unlike you speaking to the creditor, and expert speaks on your behalf and say, this is the situation. We understand that the creditor, the debtor actually made a mistake by not telling you and so forth, but this is what they are prepared to actually do. And this is how far they can go.
So you're not just sitting at home before you take action?
No, not at all. But even at this stage, you know, it depends on case by case. Another creditor will say, okay, settle the arrears. This is what has happened before, because we've worked with mediators before. You say, settle the arrears, not the whole amount, and then you can then start paying normally afterwards, or pay a minimum installment afterwards, you know what I mean? Then they can stop. I mean, we've had cases where, you know, there was 10 days before the car is being auctioned. They do stop. So it's a different arrangement altogether from debt cancelling.
I think what's important here from an education point of view as well, for the sheriff to knock on your door, there's been communication sent to you prior to that time.
And that's why I was asking her, did she communicate with the creditors?
People say, I'll close my eyes, it'll go away. It won't go away. So just respond to that communication, and you could potentially
prevent a lot of
what's happening.
And make arrangements earlier. I mean, that's very important. A lot of the credit providers, as Scott rightfully said earlier, they don't want to trade in property. They're not property owners. The credit providers with regards to vehicles are exactly the same. They're not vehicle dealerships. They do not want that vehicle, but that is their last resort. At the end of the day, they have a credit agreement which is not being honoured at this point, and they have to take some form of recourse that they have in terms of the Act, which is to proceed with legal action. But they have not just woken up one morning and suddenly issued you with a summons. There would have been a lot of attempts to try and make some form. And it's very important that we use those forms of communication, play open cards with them, come to some form of arrangement. I mean, we've heard all kinds of arrangements where they would say, we'll take the vehicle in, but you will pay us X amount for a certain amount of months, and then you can have the vehicle back at the normal installments. They are negotiable once the legal action has happened. But before the legal action happens, you have to look at your alternative options. And if, for example, you are not employed, yes, debt counselling might not necessarily be the option for you. But then look at at alternatives. You know, what kind of arrangement would they look at? Would they keep it in safekeeping and storage until you become employed? But if you become employed, immediately communicate that with them and try and see what alternative options you have.
Look, we're also talking during the break that there's something called some sort of insurance. Yes, a retrenchment cover. Yes. Tell us more about that, Annelie.
Well, obviously, from the credit provider's perspective, once you apply for the loan, the vehicle asset finance, they will at that point give you options for what they call value-added products. And this could be group life, etc. And one of them is retrenchment option. And that is something I personally believe in.
Is it like a loan
very
insurance type of thing?
It is a type of insurance. And it's a nominal amount that you pay every month on top of your normal asset finance to them. But it protects you from these unforeseen eventualities. And the problem is they are real. Looking at retrenchment right now, it's a very, very real factor happening in our economy. So to rather have that backfall, it's a necessary evil. It's one of those grudge expenses you have to have. Rather have it and know that you can fall back on it, cover your installments, and at least not lose your assets at the end of the day.
Absolutely. All right, I guess this pilisi, I hope uzwile sisiphiliswa, and let's hope ukuthi uzothola usizo. And I'll ask ubhuti Andile, she was talking about the fact that debt review was it too late ukuthi aye khona bhuti ucabanga kanjani?
Yes, no. I mean, when you know, legal action has started already. The debt review is not the option for that particular creditor. Remember, they can include other creditors, but for this particular one, it's not an option because legally it's not allowed to actually fall under debt review.
All right, okay. Masithathe uSipho eLenasia la eGauteng. Sipho, siyakwamukela ohlelweni umbuzo noma umbono nsizwa.
Ngiyalamukela sis Alicia uSipho Seroto from eLehaye.
Yebo bhuti.
Believe one of the important things that the credit providers should do is that they have to consider options that the consumer can be able to have once, if in case you are unable to pay for your loan, or if you are struggling, such as about debt consolidation, so that they can inform the consumer from the initial stage when you are applying for a loan. And then I would like to also advise the consumers at home that there's one thing that they are not aware of is that once, let's say, for example, you've been handed over maybe to the lawyers, maybe you had a loan, you couldn't be able to pay. Once you made means to pay that loan, you have to request a paid-up letter as a proof that you no longer owe. That's one of the things that consumers do not consider, that once you have a paid up letter, it's a proof that you are no longer owing.
Okay, siyabonga kakhulu Butsipho ngalowo mbono. You know what he's saying is based, you heard him, he says, you know, one of the things that that should be considered is what other options of payments than in any eventuality that you could use. Do you think we could do something? Do you offer services like that, Scott?
What can happen is your installment could be, for example, 10,000 Rand a month.
Yeah.
And you come and say, I can afford X. It could cover the interest portion of that installment. We will look at it.
But you wouldn't know that when you go apply for the loan.
No,
I mean, is it any part of a discussion when I come to apply?
The last thing I want to do is tell people up front, if you do go into debt, you know, please phone me. No, it's something that I think it's right up front. We have contact call centers and client services. You just make a phone call and they're there to help you. All the financial institutions have those client service centers. Yeah, but the arrangements can be made. We do not want to take people's houses away from them. That's the last thing we want to do.
An arrangement to be made,
It
not
really
just
is.
made late, but on time as well. All right,
and keep to it.
All right, and keep to it. All right, okwamanje mbukela siphinde futhi sibalekele ngaseyitolo. Do stay right there. Siphinde sikwamukele mbukeli phuthuma mangabe ufuna ukuthi ke uthole usizo ngoba phela sesizoligoqa uhlelo. Let me just ask something. We know that there's been you know, student upheavals, but do students qualify for a debt consolidation loan? Very quickly, Scott.
No, if it's a full-time student, I would say no, because there's no income to back the repayment of the debt. If you're a part-time student,
possibly, yeah. I mean, if you're a UNISA student, for example, you're most likely employed. That's why you're studying part-time. There, I think you have a way better chance of, because you'll have an income and you're studying at night. So I don't think that'll be an issue. But I think full-time students, it will be extremely difficult because they will be looking towards parents probably who would have to assign sureties, etc. Yes.
Okay, so if students that are working part-time want to consolidate the debt they incurred during their
very difficult.
You'll find they'll have a bank account and they'll be with a bank or a financial institution. So they'll have a bit of history. So yeah, it's like anything.
You just check the credit rating.
Check the credit rating and make a decision.
All right, thank you, Scott. Let's take Sis Nonkosi from Port Elizabeth. Sis Nonkosi, you are final caller namhlanje. Uthi qabu njengombuzo wakho.
Hello, Sisi.
Hello, ma.
Mama nathanda ngicela ubuza wethu ne.
Yebo ma.
Mama ndandiye kwezindawo zeganishi ne. Kwathiwa kumzawutsayela 550 ngenyanga. Bathi ke bazawubhatala bona for 3 months. Bazawuqalisa i-6 ezintathu bona for 3 months, the first quarter. Then ke ngoku xa ndiphinda ndisiya ngoNovember kuba ndandifumanile seyiso African Bank nakukwezindawo bezam zamatyala. Bathi ke ubona i-first quarter yabayithathela ithatha unyaka wonke. Ndithi 550 zam ndizibhatele unyaka wonke kule ndawo ndandiye kuyo. Abakaqalisa ukubhatela ityala into enjalo ithiwani.
Okay, ke ma, but Andile, you.
Ganishi orders, one of the most difficult facility, or if I may call it that way. It's, I mean, they say about over 90% of the Ganishi orders are done illegally. So you might, you know, the fees there, you know, they are not properly regulated and so forth. So there's a whole lot of issues there. I mean, it's an opening a can of worms, but it's possible.
Yeah, but Mam Nonkosi, mufuni paid up letter, usuqedile ukhokhela isikweletu sakho.
Andikaqali bazi elaxesha ndileyo kuba ndiyobuza kuba nandifumana ileta bathe kum abakaqalisa ubhatala nakwenye indawo because bebesabhatala bona which unyaka wonke bebendifanele laa mali for unyaka wonke lo nyaka phela imali ibishona kubo kababhatala ityala lithi which bethe kum i-first quarter yabo 3 months then from then bazawubhatala lawo amatyala.
Yo, but Andile, address quickly.
Okay, I think ukuya back kuyo ama-lawyer, you know, ave ba i-statement sami benithe ndizabhatala 3 months ngoku why ndibhatala, you know, the rest of the term.
Yes.
And I think i-case ye-NCR as well. NCR for i-recourse abaxelele uba this is the initial installment efakwe kuganishi because it's a legal order iganishi as well. Funeka abuyele kuye u-NCR and then bayijonge le nto maybe mhlawumbi bazayi-audita futhi akhona mandingayifaki engxakini zama-debt counselors.
All right. Sisinonkosi PE hamba usheshe sisi uye e-NCR uthole usizo khona. All right, before we wrap up the show, unfortunately mbukeli sesiyivalile-ke ingcingo manje. Scott, I hear you're quite an expert and you're going to explain to us the difference between secured and consolidated debt and unsecured.
All right.
What is that?
It's quite simple. Secured a secured lending, you've got an asset covering your debt.
Okay, a
So
house.
for a house, for example, if you increase your home loan, should something go wrong, you've got an asset you can sell to cover the debt.
Okay.
As simple as that. Unsecured, you're basing that lending on past history, on past credit history. Should it go sour, you don't have an asset to cover that debt, you'd have to go the legal process then. So that is the difference.
All right. Annalene, anything to add before we go? Quick advice to our consumers before we leave.
I think the most important thing that we keep referring back to is live within your means. Stick to that budget, live within your means, and from a debt counselling perspective, know that you have help if you are over indebted and you cannot make those payments anymore before the legal action starts and before it becomes too late in essence. Approach a debt counsellor, let them assist you and renegotiate.
Look, Andile, ilokhuzana, of course, debt consolidation is not the only option. Awusitshele nje ukuthi abanye abantu yini mhlawumbe abanye abangayizali, especially since abanye can't qualify for that loan.
No, yiyo njengoba sebashilo. I-debt consolidation, i-debt counselling ikhona. There's what is called debt relief plan, where an expert or a mediator negotiates on your behalf with the creditor. And the fact that wena ngokwakho unga-negotiate with the creditors ngokwakho. And I think abantu abana confidence. You know, abana confidence ukuya creditor akhuluma ukuthi no izinto ziyabheda, you know, can you arrange, but mostly I mean abanye abantu amaningi amabhenki amakhulu do have ama departments asebenza nabantu abangakhona ukubhadala ama monthly installments wabo on a monthly basis. So it's not something new. Making an arrangement is actually a proactive. You must look at yourself as a hero than a weak person. If we are guma creditors, you're actually in control. You are a leader, in fact, in your house.
Final word, Scott?
My side is keep a clean credit history and communicate.
All right, Haige Mbugeli, that is where we end uhlelo lanamhlanje. Siyabonga kakhulu. Let me thank my studio guests for making time to be with us and for the invaluable knowledge. Sibonge nani phela babukeli ngokuthi nibe nathi kuze kube manje. Please join us again next week Friday for another riveting live consumer affairs show when we'll be focusing on consumer rights to mark World Consumer Rights Week. From me, Alishin Tombiagajali, and the whole team, till we meet again, nichazelwe kahle nenza ama decisions are right. Nifunde futhi ukuthi nisayinani. Nisale kahle.
Yilungelo Lakho.